Sankirtana ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Antakoti Vaishnavrinda ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Om Jnanaatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Kamyena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpa Tarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Bevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine. Namaste Saraswate Deve Manavani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone. So, last week we discussed the topic of, what was our topic last week? Faith. And we said faith, Srila Prabhupada had defined it as confidence that if I perform a certain action, a desired result will come. And we spoke about how in all aspects of life we require faith. To get a simple haircut, we have faith. When we boarded that airplane, we put our lives in the hands of a pilot who we never have known, we have not spoken with. We have faith that they can get us from point A to point B. We have faith just walking down the street that the tree will not topple over. We cannot exist without faith. It is a core function of life. And we said the reason we cannot exist without faith is because we have very limited knowledge. We cannot know for certain everything around us. They gave the example of climbing the stairs just to come into this apartment. We had faith that they would hold the weight of our step as we proceeded up each step. We had faith because we did not know what engineering went into making those steps, what skilled carpenter put the steps together, what is the status of the screws and nails holding it together. We have limited knowledge. So we have to operate in day-to-day life with some faith. And that faith builds in time over experience. If I see 5 people successfully climb those stairs, I think, well, certainly I also can. So our faith develops over time. We may have some doubts at first, some question marks. But as we experience, we see others experience, our faith builds. So faith is not binary, either I have it or I don't, but it's the degree of faith. So in spiritual life, we also require some faith, because we cannot know everything firsthand. But in the process of practicing our spirituality, ultimately we'll come to know everything. But between the beginning and that point, we operate with some faith. But it is not blind faith. And what propels us in our faith is the experience. As I begin to practice, my faith builds. I do something, a result comes. Just like the first time I flew in an airplane, my faith was probably not that strong. I was fearful. But after the 10th, 50th, 100th time I've flown, my faith becomes much stronger. So similarly, in our spiritual life, we begin with some level of faith. And by the experience we have in the practice, our faith will develop in time. And we must assess where to put my faith also. We'll not jump into anyone's airplane. We want to know what is the credibility of this institution that is flying this plane. Do they have a track record? Is there a history? Have they been accredited by certain agencies? So we don't put our faith blindly in anything, nor should we in our spiritual journey. So we talked about the importance in faith as the first step in our spiritual progress. So we will acquire lots of information. That knowledge plus some faith will lead to some action, some performance of different activities in spiritual life. As we experience the results, that increases our faith. This is working. Well, as our faith increases, what happens? We do more. We perform more. And as we perform more spiritual activities, what happens to our faith? That increases. And this cycle continues. Right? So that is what we discussed last week. So now, this week we'll discuss this constitutional position of the soul. That's a mouthful. What does that mean? If you read Bhagavad Gita, you read different things, you'll see this sometimes, constitutional position of the soul. Maybe you've heard the term Sanatana Dharma. Our eternal, Sanatana means eternal. Dharma doesn't have a great, perfect translation, but we can say occupation or function. What is my function? What am I supposed to do? Right? So, we're going to answer 2 questions today. We've answered it in the seminar, but that was a long time ago. Now we're going to revisit some similar topics. And the first question is, who am I? But who am I alone doesn't give me the complete answer. Then I need to know, what is my function, my occupation, my job? You know, I found this, I love my job. But what is it? What is my function as spirit soul? So we're going to answer these 2 questions today. Okay? So back to the first question, which is, who am I? Anybody remembers this analogy?
Yeah.
What is it?
We are the car. He's the driver.
And who am I? Who are you? The car or the driver?
Car.
The car? You say no. Who do you? Huh? Anybody? Driver?
We're the driver.
We're the driver. The car is the analogy for the body. And the driver is the analogy for soul. Right? So the car is just matter. It needs some living force to move it from point A to point B. So this body, it's also just matter. What is it made up of? Water, various minerals, some heat, different chemicals, right? We have all the anatomy and biology that tells us all these different things. But any of them have any life force of themselves? No. So the car is like the body, and the driver is the soul. So within our body is the soul. And so who am I? Who are you? Spirit soul. You're a spirit soul. And Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita this very important and foundational verse. It comes very early in the Bhagavad Gita. He says, Dehinoshmin yatha dehe kaumauram yavanam jara tata dehan tara praptir diras tatra namuyati. So we are all here at some point, and we're going up and up and up. And where are we? I'll stop right at the top. The point is, what's happening to the bodies? They're constantly changing. But what is constant? The soul. The soul is moving from infant to boyhood to youth to middle age to old age. And Krishna says, and ultimately, it will come back into another body. Just like when you have a vehicle, and if it's a lease, it has a certain duration, then you have to turn it in. And you get a new one. Like that, the soul is transmigrating from body to body. Right? So Krishna says, Dhiras. A sober person is not bewildered by such a change. But why is it so bewildering to us?
Because it's emotionally hard.
It's emotionally hard. Because we have some attachment to the body, right? Just like if I had so much emotional attachment to my car, when I trade it in, I feel like a piece of me is gone, right? Because I have that emotional attachment. But is a piece of me gone? No. But because I have such strong attachment, that emotional feeling is there, right? Just like, if you really are attached to your car and you're driving down the street and a stone hits the car, we as the driver feel pain. We feel pain. Why do we feel pain? We were not hit by that stone, but we feel pain because we're attached to it. Right? So Krishna is saying, you have a body as a function, but what we should remember is, who am I? I am that driver. And what is the importance of knowing the distinction between the body and the soul? What is so important about knowing the distinction between body and soul?
Because then you can separate your emotions.
Can I say we can direct our emotions to what counts? When there's an accident on the side of the road, where does our emotional energy go to? First and foremost. Is everyone okay? Are the drivers, the passengers, are they okay? Right? Then we will secondarily go to see what is the nature of the vehicles. But first and foremost, we want to know, is everyone okay? So our attention, our emotion will first go there. But in our day-to-day life, where is our emotional energy going? To the body or to our soul? To the body. It is like someone who is caring more for their car than themselves. We would consider that not so wise. Right? So because the car has needs and the driver has needs, we need to understand both. So similarly, the body has needs, which we are very well in tune with. But what are the needs of the soul? That is what unlocks our quest for happiness. As we'll see in a little bit, the happiness we are searching for, this ananda, it doesn't come from the vehicle, the body. It comes from the soul. But we are trying to mismatch the two. So now we're going to undo that. So, what is the soul's relationship with God? We said it's part and parcel. What does part and parcel mean? We can take that first. What does part mean? Piece of. Of what?
Something.
Of the whole.
Of something. Of the whole. Of what whole?
Body. Yourself.
Of yourself?
God.
Of God. Of Supersoul. So the Lord says that we, each of us as individual living entities, are part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. It says, Mamai Vamsho Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatanaha. Each living entity is my fragmental part. Part means we have very similar qualities to God. Just like if I take a drop of water out of the ocean, that drop in my hand will have very similar qualities to the whole of ocean. Right? Because it comes from the ocean. So similarly, our soul as a fragmental part. How to understand a fragmental part? When you have a blazing fire, you see those sparks that come out? Those sparks are tiny pieces of fire. Right? So like that, our soul is like a tiny spark coming from God. And it has very similar qualities. But quantity is very small. Just like in that drop of water, how much salt is contained within that drop? A very little bit. But how much salt is in the vast ocean? Virtually unlimited. So while we are part of the Lord, we have similar qualities, we are quantitatively very small. Just like a spark, it has some light, it has some heat. But how strong is that heat or light compared to the fire? It's very small. But it has the same quality. So that is what it means by part. So we as spirit soul, we have this quality that is comes from the Lord. Parcel. You want to guess what parcel means?
The whole
Hmm?
entire thing.
The whole thing? Package?
Parcel means package.
Package. Okay. There's another meaning for parcel. When I say I parcel out a piece of land,
It's big pieces of it.
I make pieces of it, right? They're distinct.
Parsed.
Parsed, exactly. They become distinct. So it means that my soul, it is part of God, but it remains distinct as an individual entity. Meaning that drop of ocean water, when I put it back into the ocean, it becomes indistinguishable from the ocean. Right? But our spirit soul, it is eternally distinct. So Krishna speaks in the prior verse to the verse we just read. He says, never was there a time that you did not exist, nor I. And never shall there cease to be a time that you exist, nor me. What that means is this parcel piece. We are these sparks that are our individual identity. We have an individuality that is eternal. It is not temporary. If we stay here in the material world, we'll maintain our individuality. If we go back to the spiritual world, we'll also maintain our individuality. So that is the nature of the soul. Now, the question is how to turn our frown upside down. Right? We're all in this quest for happiness. So knowing that I am the driver, not the car, knowing I am spirit soul, is the first step in the equation. But what's the next question?
How to realize it?
How to realize it, okay?
How to keep it?
How to keep it? Identify who I am? Realize it? Those are all very good.
What should I do?
What should I do? If I know I'm soul, if I have knowledge I'm spirit soul, now what? Now what is my dharma, my occupation, my function? That was the second question. Right? What am I supposed to do? Okay, great, I know I'm spirit soul, but now what? So realizing I'm spirit soul is step one. Understanding then the function of the soul is step two. And you all hit on some very important point, which is realizing it is a gradual process. We'll walk out of here and say, I am spirit soul, I'm not this body. Oh, car and driver, bird in the cage, yes. Realizing it takes time. Meaning, and what does realizing it mean?
Accepting.
Accepting. When we realize it, what happens? Awareness.
Acting accordingly.
Acting accordingly.
We understand.
Truth.
We understand it.
Knowing the truth.
Knowing the truth. If the doctor says, I have diabetes, what should that do to me? What should be the result?
Follow the directions of the doctor.
Follow the directions. Some changed behavior. I should avoid certain things, do certain things. There should be a... So the degree of my change of behavior signifies how much I have realized the diagnosis that has been given to me. Does it make sense? So the degree in which I follow those instructions indicates how much I have realized. So realization that I'm spirit soul is a gradual process. It's not going to happen by the flip of a switch. It can, depending on our desire, but more often it's a gradual process of realizing who I am and what is my function. So the spirit soul has a fundamental nature, and we'll talk about that. But the goal of every living entity in this material world is to try to be the master, the proprietor of everything around us. Even with the best of intentions with that result, but that is a driving force. How I can control more land, how I can control more of this, acquire more resources, that is the driving force of our existence. That is what we are trained to bring up in a very early age. And we'll see. But trying to be master of the universe is what leads to our frown. Why?
Because you can't be the master of the universe.
Because you can't be the master of the universe. If I want to fly like a bird, no matter how much I try to flap my arms, but I'm so determined to fly like a bird, will I find happiness? No matter how intelligent I am, well, you say I'm foolish if I have that desire, but no matter how much I try to fly, the effort will be there. But will I find happiness? Why not?
You didn't try it. How to get
No,
it?
I tried it. I've tried hard.
Because you're failing, because you can't.
Because I can't. It's not my nature to be a fly like a bird. So I'm going against the nature of who I am. So no matter how much I try, it's going to lead to some frustration. Right? So the question we have to understand is, who are we, master or servant? And this is the ego-shattering realization when we realize we are spirit soul. But after our ego is shattered initially, it will build up into the greatest source of strength and power to be able to conquer all forces when we understand the true nature of who I am. Because then my energies can go from stop trying to fly like a bird to do something productive, which is consistent with the nature of myself. So who are we? Are we master or servant? So we all reluctantly say servant. And there is some reluctance there. That is natural. It is why we're here in the first place. Not here in this apartment. Here in this world. Why? Because we had a desire to be master. Now why is it that we cannot be the Lord of all things? We didn't create anything. Did we really create anything? What did we come into this world with?
Nothing.
And what are we going to leave this world with? Between point A and point B, what are we doing?
Using someone else's.
We're using someone else's resources, right? We're organizing things, using our intelligence to bring different raw materials together to produce products, using different things to create certain services. But none of it is what we brought into this world, right? So in that regard, it means we must have a servant nature. Because there's someone else who has created it all. Right? It's just like a child. A child living in mother and father's home. What do they want?
To be the master.
To be the master. They want independence. Right? Right? And what happens when the child tries to exert its independence in the household?
It's a battle.
It's a battle. And who wins?
The master.
The master. And who is left frustrated?
Servant.
The child. Right?
That's right, because a servant wouldn't be frustrated.
Yeah. A servant who knew they were so would never be frustrated. You're right.
They would take great pride in what they were doing.
When that child recognizes, oh, my mother and father are the proprietors of this home. They're providing such facilities. When they act in that relationship, do the facilities they are provided increase or decrease?
Increase.
Mother and father shower more things on them.
Because they're appreciative.
Because they're appreciative. When they try to be the Lord of it themselves, conflict. But when the child lives in the home, understanding its relationship, the mother and father shower more mercy, more blessings, more benefits. While we are living in God's home. We are all children in God's home. When we begin to understand that and live with it, with that understanding, are we going to win or lose?
Win.
We're going to gain. But it takes understanding this nature. Right? And why is my position as servant? You might ask, what does this picture have to do with anything? Right? Well, we said we are part of the whole. Who is the whole? God. So the role of any part is to serve the whole. What is the function of my hand? Serve who? Me, the body. How does it render service to the body? Eat. Combs the hair. Sometimes. It does different things, right? the hand serves the whole, and thus the hand also benefits. If the hand tries to enjoy independently, you bring a piece of cake, and hand says, you know what? I'm not giving it to the stomach. What did the stomach do for me lately? I'm going to enjoy it on my own. Besides making a mess, anything happens productive?
No.
And that cake is made. So the role of any part is to work in unison, in conjunction with the whole. So we are part of the Supreme Lord, and so our role is in service. So what is our eternal job description? On our resume, we produce. What is our eternal? I may be engineer, doctor, homemaker, lawyer today, but that's just related to my body. What is the job description of the soul? To serve God. That is the eternal job function. Whether it's raining or sunny, whether I'm old or young, whether I'm in this body or the next. That is why it's called Sanatan Dharma. Sanatan means eternal. Meaning it's irrespective of which body I'm in today. I have one eternal function, and that is to be the servant of God. Why? Because I am part and parcel of Him. If we examine, actually it is the nature of the soul to serve. No one in this universe exists without serving someone. Why? Because that is the natural characteristic of the soul, to render service. We think, oh, the President of the United States, he is serving everyone. We are either serving our family, our country, our neighbor, our job, our dog, someone, something. We are always in service of. So it is not a question of if to serve. It is simply a question whom. Whom to serve. And we render service when there is some reciprocation back. What does that mean? What is my motivation to render service to someone? Some feeling of satisfaction, some response, something. You go to the office and render service, right? What do you want back? Paycheck.
2 times 7.
And benefits.
Twice a month. And some benefits. And some feeling of accomplishment. There's some reciprocal relationship that must exist, right? So, when we think of service, we always think of it as a one-way street. When we say serve God, our connotation comes to it's a one-way street. But it is not a one-way street. See, in the experience we have, service we go to the mind or the place of exploitation. Right? What does the employer do? They pay you the absolute minimum amount required to motivate you to come back the next day. Right? That's how you maximize profits. Whatever I have to give, because the rest I get to keep. We call it a zero-sum game. Think about, a cake. If I give one slice to someone, that means the remaining 11 slices are for me. The minimum I have to give, I get to give. So this service in that nature, we think, it is kind of a one-way street. Right? But when we serve the Lord, it is the most incredible, dynamic, two-way street you'll ever experience. Because let's see. Service. What does it mean to serve?
Make that person happy.
To make the other person happy. Spoken from a mother.
To do something for someone else.
To do something for someone else.
To put their needs before yours.
To put their needs before yours. Yes. Any other?
To be recognized by someone.
To be recognized, to get some sort of response back.
Yeah, simply to give.
Sometimes simply just to give.
To help someone.
That feeling of helping or giving itself is sufficient satisfaction. So if we think about it, ultimately service is the topmost activity to express love. Now service, remember when we first say it, it had a negative connotation. Servant. No, I want to be master. But service is the highest activity one can do to express love. If I want to express my love to my mother, I can call her on the telephone and say, "Mother, I love you." That is nice. But what would be an even better way to express my love? Do something for her. Go and give her company. Help her with something she is in need of. Make her a pie. Whatever. To do some service. That service is not a service out of exploitation. What is it? It's an expression of love. So Srila Prabhupada translated bhakti. Bhakti, which means devotion, as devotional service. Meaning service as an expression of our love. Our love to whom? That is what devotion. So our eternal occupation is to being the loving servant of Krishna. And when we do, the response back from the Lord is overwhelming. Like when a child renders service to mother and father, who benefits in that equation, ultimately? The child. What service child can really render to mother and father? It's very limited when they're young. Obviously the equations flip as they age, but when they're young. When we render service to the Lord as an expression of our love, the response is so overwhelming. And that is where we begin to experience His peace and happiness. So our service to Krishna is not one of, I serve, He enjoys, and I suffer. That is where our mind initially goes. I serve, master wins, servant loses. Because that is what we are conditioned, that's mostly what we experience in the material world. But real love is of service. And Krishna says, Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam statavya bhajamyaham. He says, when my devotee serves me, what does he do? He renders service back. He doesn't say, sit back in the spiritual world and say more. No, what he says, I personally come. He'll say in the 9th chapter in a separate verse, I carry what my devotee is lacking. I protect what they have. He doesn't say, I send. He says, I personally come. Yeah.
Isn't it sometimes that when we serve, right? I mean, since it is our original nature, maybe one of the virtues of soul, for example, right? Then doesn't we automatically feel good about it when you serve? I mean, it doesn't need to be written by somebody who you serve with, right? It's just an expression of yourself and you feel good about it. I don't know why, but you feel good about it when you do some good thing for others, right?
Yeah. So the motive for service, there needs to be some emotion. Right? I cannot serve this wood stand. Why? Because there'll be no reciprocation back. It is called, actually, there's a term, it's called rasa. Bhakti rasa. There's not a great English word for it, but it means mellow, or like the sweetness of a fruit. That rasa one tastes in performing bhakti is what inspires one to do more. Because that taste, there is bhakti rasa and there is mundane rasa, meaning material rasa. Right? There is taste from acquiring wealth, from becoming famous, from all kinds of things. So which taste I will pursue, bhakti rasa or mundane rasa? It's based on which is sweeter, which is more pleasing. And that is what the Lord says in the 2nd chapter. Propelled by a higher taste, one will begin to practice more and more spiritual life. Because we are bringing the soul back to its original constitution. I made this comment earlier. Oil and water do not mix. Our spirit soul finds its constitution or position in connection with the whole, in connection with God. Trying to find happiness and peace in the material world, you'll find some. Just like if you whip oil and water together, it'll seemingly be mixed. But what happens as soon as you stop?
Separate out.
Because they constitutionally don't mix. Similarly, our spirit soul never mixes with the material world. It is like the fish out of water. The fish sitting on the beach, no matter what you offer it, wealth, fame, praise, we all like to hear ourselves glorified, wonderful music, nice foodstuffs. No happiness. Why? Because it's not in its constant natural environment. What is the fish's natural environment? What is our soul's natural environment?
Devotion.
Spiritual world. Devotion. Service to Krishna. That is the eternal. Not temporary. Not today's flavor of the month. That is Sanatana. It's eternal. And it is up to us, when we tire of trying to mix oil with water, and again reconnect with spirit. So this spiritual process is about realizing I am spirit soul, and then answering, well, what is the nature or function of my soul? And it is to serve. And as soon as we stop trying to be the master of our domain, we say, we actually are able to conquer everything around us. But otherwise, it is a very frustrating situation. So, this devotional service we'll speak of more and more as we go forward is the constitutional, or it is the intrinsic nature. It is the natural instinct of the soul. And when we serve the Lord, all of the things that are worthy of our love and service also become nourished. What does that mean? When I go to a tree and I want to nourish all the fruits of that tree, how do I nourish all the fruits of that tree? I water the root. And by watering the root, all the fruits are nourished. Similarly, there are so many wonderful recipients of our love. Our family, our friends, society, neighbors, our co-workers, all living entities around us. When we serve the Lord, from that service, all around us manifest. It is not by serving the Lord we are ignoring all these other personalities are very important to us. But it is through the service of the Lord that everything becomes very peaceful and sweet. So the key to our happiness is that. So yes, we must know I'm soul. Then we must understand what is the nature of my soul. And what are the activities of the soul? Back to the ABCDs. This is what brings the soul back in connection with spirit. And so while we are in the office, while we're in our family life, while we're in society life, Krishna does not say you give up all of that. He says, no, you bring spirituality into the center of all of your activities. And thus we learn to see this as the house of the Lord. My job is to be in service of the Lord. Everything becomes very sweet and peaceful and happy for me. And it is I who will ultimately gain. And as you said, ultimately the motive for even this service will purify to just wanting to please God. And that is when we come to the mode of pure service. Okay? So any comments or questions?
So I have a question. So why is there a human desire to seek appreciation?
Why is there a human desire to seek appreciation?
Yeah.
It's born of our false ego. Because that need for appreciation is one of the impurities in our heart. It's our pride. Right? So if you think about it, if we have a very humble position, right? If I take a very humble position, I'll never feel disrespected. As soon as I have an expectation of someone to treat me, to receive me, to glorify me in a certain way, I have potential to be dissatisfied. Because someone may not meet that expectation. What creates that expectation is false pride. Thinking I am the center. I am the doer. I am the Lord. And as soon as you realize, Krishna's the Lord. He is God. I am His servant. Then that false ego begins to break very quickly. It doesn't make one weak. It doesn't make one, oh, now people will trample over me. No. One will still have great strength. But one will not become demotivated when that respect and appreciation doesn't come. Because ultimately, the respect and appreciation we ultimately want from is God. So if some other person doesn't give me the respect I want, if I have a devotional attitude, I'll think, that's okay.
They're no better than me.
Yeah. I want it, he wants it, great. Let us both serve the Lord. I liked how you said that, they're no better than me. Right? It's like when the dog barks back. Who's better? Who started it? You know?
So the converse is also true, right? Even if you get it, then
You get it? Are you happy? Are you satisfied? When we get that respect? No. We want more. We want it the next time. It's not satisfying. The ultimately satisfying activity, the eternal satisfying activity, is our bhakti. It's the only activity that will eternally satisfy. Yeah, we may get some satisfaction, experiencing some fame or going to the movies or this party or that. We'll get some satisfaction, no doubt. But is it eternal? Is it long lasting? It's not. Why? Because it's not the nature of the soul. We're going against the constitutional position of the soul.
and the more one seeks that kind of relief is a sign of how badly you need to be in the other side, I think, right?
Yeah. Sometimes that's why those who are in difficulties come very quickly to spiritual life sometimes. Because they've become frustrated by their material attempts. I've banged my head against a wall over and over again. Bang, ouch, bang, ouch, bang, ouch. I should probably stop. But one who hasn't yet experienced the ouch Maybe their motivation, maybe the catalyst is subdued. But what will keep us in the practice of bhakti is only that two-way street. Because if there's no reciprocation, if there's no experience back, we'll try something else. We'll try something else.
And the reciprocation is in way of
Happiness.
You'll feel it. And it is the Lord residing in your heart, showering love. You'll feel it. When we start to chant, when we start to read, when we associate, there's a different sense of happiness and peace. And maybe you're all experiencing some of it already. That's the motivation. And yes, at some point we'll come to be unmotivated. Meaning I don't do it because I want to experience that. I do it because it pleases my Lord. But we have to make progressive steps there. I cannot get the PhD until I get the earlier levels of education.
In the material world, if you look at the ouch moment that you talked about, so even though it may be false pride or whatever, or ego, but when you don't achieve what you really wanted to achieve, right?
Yeah.
And one way is to surrender everything, all right? Or may go to the devotion path, or may go to the drugs path, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Other ways to find there are a number of other ways the person may not have tried, probably not to again tumble to the ouch moment, but he may still go with number of other paths and other ways to really achieve it. Even though it is momentarily, it is not eternal, but still he can follow that. So there is a false pride comes in between before the person moves back to a devotional life. He says, why don't we try something else? Let me do X, Y, Z ways to achieve again my material satisfaction or to satisfy my ego, right? And people sometimes feel that coming back is like losing everything, right? I mean,
that's very nice. That's very, very, very nice point, because sometimes the feeling, if I'm going to become servant, I'm giving up all hope. No, you're actually gaining all hope. You're gaining all strength and ability. Because, again, we are living in the Lord's home. That child will find all kinds of varieties of ways to exert independence. Virtually no limit of ways to try. Similarly, we have lived millions of lifetimes trying to find it in each and every corner of the world. And then when we begin to experience this science of Krishna consciousness, we realize, whoa, it's right here in front of me. And it will make us more successful in all aspects of our life. By the practice of devotional life, we'll have more family success. Our relationships will become stronger when we have less ego, when we have more tolerance, more forgiveness. These are all devotional qualities. When I have less stress, I'll be more functional in the office. When I understand leadership and the living entity and the nature of individuals, I become a better manager. These are things that come from the Bhagavad Gita. So they'll make not only your soul more successful, but also your so-called material activities will also prosper. Nothing is left behind. But that is our fear. That if I do the spiritual life, I'll leave something behind. Just like if I water the root, will I forget that mango way up in the corner? No one thinks like that. The problem is we don't have yet full faith that Krishna is the root of everything. So maybe we have a small amount of faith. So what shall we do? Practice. Begin to practice slowly.
The time is an essence, right? Sometimes in the hurry, right? And if you nurture the root, it will take its own pace, natural pace to really achieve something, right? And people are in a hurry. They want to directly get to the fruit. And,
that's also nice.
Because that's a long way to achieve something.
Yeah.
Right?
But I said, we have spent millions of lifetimes. I'm saying give 3 months. And you start chanting. 3 months. In the grand scheme of how long we have been trying to bang our heads against the wall, how long is really 3 months? And so you chant every day. 10 minutes. 23 hours and 50 minutes. Whatever else you want. You just 10 minutes. It's a very small ask, the Lord says. And see the experience. It's profound. It's tangible. It's not theoretical. And each individual's experience is unique. Why? Because the Lord does not reciprocate to us in mass form. He reciprocates to each individual living entity. That is the ultimate loving nature of the Lord. That we have a very personal relationship. Just like a father has a personal relationship with each of their children. Mother has a personal relationship with each of their children. Krishna has a personal, loving relationship with each of us. And we are just in the process of trying to awaken that relationship. And that is through the ABCDs. Any other comments or next discussion? Questions? Okay. So there's a question? Okay. So let us chant, take to this process. It is the eternal Sanatan Dharma activity of all activities.